Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness. I want to go into a little flow with the guides and just kind of see what's coming through. Happy eclipse, full moon. How about that? Moon last night. Holy mackerel. I went out and watched it, and then as I was watching the moon turn orange and saw the eclipse, there was a shooting star that went across the sky. I was like, okay, this is magical. And that's part of what I wanted to share in this video is, in between all of the craziness that's happening in our lives, it's really important to stop and smell the roses. It's really important to really take these moments to appreciate nature, to appreciate what our surroundings have to offer and share with us, to appreciate earth and the trees and the bees. 2 nights ago, my dream was all about bees, 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 bees. And it's so funny because, synchronicity is how I kind of rule my life when I'm in flow. And I try to teach others how to do that as well. And one of the things that we have to pay attention to is nature in order to see those synchronicities, because animals are syncing up with us, insects are syncing up with us. Sometimes I'll have dreams about certain trees that are relevant for what I'm experiencing in my now reality. So these are all just kind of things I wanted to share that are going on in my life that I'm paying attention to on a regular basis. I had a really cool conversation with a beautiful human the other day, and we were talking about power animals, and I was explaining that from my perspective, my hair's all staticky. From my perspective, our totem animals, our power animals change. They're not the same. They're not stagnant. Yes, okay, we might have a favorite animal, because the question was, well, how do I know what my power animal is, which we were talking about. I don't know if they asked me that or if I just volunteered the information. But we all have a certain things we're drawn to. I'm drawn to geometry and shapes, and I'm drawn to particular animals that have been my favorite animals my whole life. Of course, unicorns were my favorite animals when I was a little girl, and Pegasus. But so horses, as an example, right? I've always been drawn to horses. And even though I like all animals, there's certain ones that really stand out as far as strong for me. But then all that can change based on what we're experiencing in our reality. Different symbols will present themselves, will step forward for us to pay attention to. And as the energy, or the indigenous people call it the spirit that moves through all things. The spirit that moves through all things, there's spirit in all things from one perspective, So that means we can grow and learn and um, kind of morph back and forth through all symbols. Everything is alive from one perspective. Even if we feel that we're living in a matrix, we'll say it's still a living morphogenetic type of energy that is communicating with us in response to us communicating with it. And I know I went a little bit kind of out there, but I wanted to just invite people to play with that. If you're not sure, get some power animal cards. If you feel like you're not having synchronicities, ask for them, and then be open to receive them from unexpected sources, because sometimes they don't come in the form that we're expecting or what we're looking for. Sometimes it's just us being open and expanding our peripheral vision in order to see more, right? In order for us to go, I never noticed that before. I share everywhere I go, I take pictures, and then I recognize that oftentimes my pictures are my tarot cards. They are speaking to me, saying, oh, you're paying attention to this. The reason you were drawn to this particular shape or this particular pattern is because of XYZ. I'll get more clues. And it becomes a playful interaction with our environment. And that's one of the things, again, that I focus on in my life. And therefore, I focus on when I'm working with someone else. So Hopefully someone found that little tidbit helpful. Let me just pause for a moment. Okay, so I have a few minutes. So let's just go into a little bit of flow. There's many different directions I could go with kind of playing with the energies. Um, oh, I will talk about one thing that I think is important as well. There's this idea that do you ever talk with someone and they're essentially, well, let me go in. I'll actually do that part too, because I want to go into the topic of separation versus unity and oneness, bridging versus compartmentalization. There are beings and people who are influencing the collective under the guise of being in unity and oneness. Yet, if you're listening to someone and they're saying, they're giving an us versus them scenario, I would really invite everyone just to go into your hearts and feel and understand from that feeling and that space of love and compassion that sometimes that's an old paradigm, even if it's under the umbrella of being something new or something just discovered. There are a lot of old programs being filtering through and being, there's a name for it when you take something old and you try to repackage it. And it's not necessarily being done intentionally, this separation, but we're in a great polarization. And we're all going to have different opinions about things, but we don't know what we don't know. And if we're listening to someone that acts like they do know, it's not necessarily, they may feel strongly and believe in what they are saying, just as I feel strongly and believe about certain things about reality. But I really can't prove that. Oftentimes it's, again, it's not always tangible, and so we have a lot of information filtering through the system that's full of distortion, and then packaged as unity and oneness. And that's something we're really being called to, not necessarily, are we identifying with that, or are we identifying the feeling that is creating a sense of anxiety, a sense of righteousness, a sense of I'm right and they're wrong? These are all things we're being really invited to ask ourselves. Where are we feeding into distortions? Where are we buying into more distortions? Where are we giving value to something, whether it's true or not? Is it something, the messages that we're tuning into, are they truly messages of community and divinity and oneness, or are they uh disguised, and again, this isn't necessarily intentional, as a separation, and this person is evil and this person is wrong and this person is that? It might be true to a certain extent, but we're really being invited to stop pointing fingers and to stop calling names. We're being invited to come back to, all right, we're observing what's happening. Can we observe it and still maintain a sense of compassion and focus on being the change rather than dictating what that change has to look like? Or the word I'm hearing is, I'm hearing justification, retribution, righteousness, um, all of those words that can be entangled, they can become entangled with what is actually the truth. Okay, even though that information might be true, we're being invited to say, okay, is this bringing us back into unity? Is this announcement helping us to unify? Can we share truth and do it from a place of compassion and love? It's like that. I've brought this up before, but it's kind of like that statement that we've, the whole thing where we go, I gotta get this crow. Hold on. Anyways, it's that thing like, that person is really, I mean, I'm not judging. I'm not going to judge, but that person is wrong. We all do that from time to time, let's face it. And again, I did a video about judgment, so I'm not going to go into that. We're going to judge, we're human. Come on, let's face it. But if we're part of being the change, are we going to sit and have, a gossip session about judging others? Is that really helping us unify? So these are all questions we're being called to ask ourselves. What am I participating in that is actually creating more separation, more distortion, that is creating a more anger, right? Again, hostility. So these are things to use our discernment when we're listening to other teachers, other uh, truth tellers. Even in that way, I'm being called more and more to move away from a very polarized message, no matter what the message is. And that's just my own perspective. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that's going on, but it does mean that I'm being called to focus even more on spreading light, spreading love, teaching how we can grow from the inside out rather than looking at what's being projected at us from the outside in and then trying to figure it out. You know, Again, it's not just all logical and analytical. It is a sense, our higher sensations, and as we grow from the inside out, we begin to make more sense of why people are the way they are. We begin to feel into, I'll give an example. I have a lot of clients and friends and colleagues who are in it. I'm a little bit in it right now. I've got my own stuff going on. And it's difficult, they'll be grumpy or snappy, and it's difficult sometimes not to react to that. And this is another side example. I guess I'm just going to keep talking about this, and not take it personal. My dear friends and sisters, Jess, had just mentioned, and Candace and I had been talking about a week or so ago, I'm just not going to take it personal, because uh everybody's going through stuff, and it's not necessarily, it has nothing to do with us sometimes. So some of the things that we're witnessing maybe were done in the past, and this echo is coming up still. We're still seeing an echo. We're still seeing the residue of the residual of the old that is essentially still here. It's just taking its time to dissolve and to be reorganized, repatterned, resurfaced, if you will, but done in such a way, it's like using an old piece of furniture. You clear out the furniture, you clean it up, and we don't throw it away just because it's ugly. It's still part of a useful, oh boy, I just went off onto a tangent there, because I know people out there are like, well, we don't want gross, old, ugly energy. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because those distortions, some of us are being called to see those distortions for what they are, for what they really are. Are we matching the distortions with more distortions? Are we pointing fingers and name calling and essentially creating more anger and fear in response to the echo of this dissolution that's happening? And I'm playing with that. I've done this a lot in the past. Dissolution, dissolving the illusion. So even that is an illusion to a certain extent. Even the truth that we're learning about is an illusion to a certain extent, because it's only true based on the reality or the projection or the perspective of our frequency that we're holding in order to understand the pattern that we're witnessing. I know I just kind of went off into a little bit of a tangent there. Hopefully that was understandable. I have to run. But so that was just the quick message that I was seeing. I'm just witnessing this. I'm witnessing it in myself. I'm witnessing it in other people. And simultaneously, while we have all of these echoes, so I'll get back to the furniture. Some of it's being repurposed. There are some people that are being repurposed. Some people that maybe we really strongly disliked that are now coming back into our lives and saying, look, I've changed, you know, forgive me. Sometimes people are not, and they're being more and more giving us more reasons to forgive them. My point is that we're being called to, how are we responding to that? How are we, I have anger that comes up still over people from my past experiences, from family, or from times that maybe uh, people said words that were not polite to me. And I still am processing some of those emotions sometimes if I run into that person again. But more and more often, I find myself being more neutral about it and coming from a place of recognizing that I don't know what I don't know. Who knows what they were going through? Maybe they were working with the best that they had. And I'm not talking about somebody who's out there creating monstrous behavior and hurting people. I'm just talking about each and every one of us every day. The more compassion we can have with each other, the more compassion we can have with ourselves, the less those atrocities are going to be created. Because they won't fit in our new program. They won't fit within our new shape. They're distorted. So the distortions will no longer hold the same pattern because we will no longer be identifying with them. We will no longer be giving them our energy. We will recognize them and say, no, that is not what I am going to focus on. I'm going to help those people who are being mistreated. And I'm going to do that by fill in the blanks. It's not about us necessarily going out and taking down someone because they said words that were out of alignment. It's about us not saying words out of alignment to essentially introduce a new way of thinking and feeling to particular groups and people who will have a ripple effect. And eventually that chaos, those distortions, and that program that's old will dissolve, but we're still there. It's like an overlay. So we're still all in it. We're still witnessing everything happening now all at once, which I finally watched that movie. It was pretty awesome, except for a couple scenes. You know the scenes I'm talking about. Still kind of hilarious though. But my point is that's how it is. And we've played all those roles from one perspective because we are part of this oneness. So when we judge others, we judge ourselves. And so it's just to recognize we're going to have those judgments. How are we responding? How are we adapting? And if we want to see if somebody is directly hurting a friend or a family member, absolutely, we're being called to step up to the plate. Okay, this is not the video I wanted to do.